Shadow Hack. Chapter 281, Strange Disappearances. As more and more time passed since the contestants had entered the dragon's mouth, they began to gradually relax. However, how could this final test be so simple? The people who were of the cautious type certainly didn't think it could. They didn't relax in the slightest, instead becoming more and more vigilant. If this place was so simple, then why would the quasi-deities have made them go through the previous two tests? Sure enough, 15 minutes things changed. As everyone went deeper and deeper into the dragon, the black dragon mist surrounding them became more and more profound. Everyone's senses grew weaker with each step, while their visibility was gradually restricted to a distance of 10 meters. Under this situation, if any dimensional beast of the Black Dragon Island attacked them, it could definitely catch them unaware. What caused the contestants' hearts to palpate was that as the dragon mist grew more profound, the degree of suppression on flux energy grew increasingly more severe. Among the 301 contestants, the group with the weakest foundation and least pure flux energy became unable to endure any more. They had no option other than removing their flux energy protective covers, the most fundamental layer of defense which could act as a cushion. After a minute passed since then, the degree of suppression on flux energy became so great that the majority of contestants were forced to remove their first layer of defense, the flux energy cover. There were barely 40 or 50 people with the firm enough foundation to support their full defenses. Lee Yoon-mu's group was part of these 40-50 people. Dread filled the hearts of others at the sight of this. If only Lee Yoon-mu had been able to endure to this stage, then others certainly wouldn't make a fuss. But Li Qinghong, Demon and Barbarian Niu's performance was even more formidable compared to the majority of contestants. This really made many people feel discouraged. Lee Yoon-mu has definitely discovered a king's true territory. He and his followers have all surprisingly congealed king crystal armor. Some attentive people had already connected the facts. King crystal armor was congealed by only few fluxers, but today, among the group of the most powerful flux disciples from all the 6 continents, this number certainly wasn't small. After all, this group of people were those standing above all the flux disciples on Earth. However, when Lee Yoon-mu and his followers used their crystal armor, they looked excessively extravagant. Instantly, some people guessed that the group had discovered a king's true territory. If this news had been revealed at ordinary times, then he would have certainly been attacked by many people for harboring such a precious treasure. But right then, most people didn't have this notion. The most important thing in their eyes at this moment was to reach the goal of descending into the origin world after clearing this round. Like Battle God had said previously, all of them represented the future of the 55th Earth's humanity. Any internal strife now would only weaken their overall strength. Most representatives of various powers already knew that after they descended to the main world, they would not only have to confront the threat of the natives of that world, they would also have fight against enemies from the other 65 projected Earths. Thus, everyone had gathered together now. Even if they had some enmity between them, they acted rationally, suppressing their grievances for the time being. I can't hold on anymore. My flux energy is quickly withering. Brother Bai-mu, I would request your help now. Finally, after another 15 minutes, one of the contestants was no longer able to endure it. He not only removed the flux energy protective cover, but also withdrew his flux energy crystal armor. This action signified that from now on, not only would his combat strength decrease greatly, but he would also lose all protection they gave him. He basically turned into a weakling. If he hadn't cultivated a body tempering technique, then his strength wouldn't be much higher than that of powerful ordinary people. An ordinary sharp sword could easily deal with him. However, this contestant was fortunate, because his companion was an overlord who had formidable strength. Bai-mu was walking with alertness in front of him, to obstruct any danger that might come his way. According to rumors, Brother Bai-mu's sense of justice is incomparable. Today, I have the fortune to witness that it is exactly so. Ye-ching, this restless person, attracted attention regardless of where he was. It seemed like he had come up with many schemes and had great ambitions regarding this descent, as he kept wandering between the small groups of contestants, taking the initiative to form friendly relations with everyone. At this moment, seeing the opportunity, he walked toward the overlord named Bai-mu and took the initiative to make friends. However, the next moment, the words he had prepared to say got stuck in his throat, and he began to tremble. With both his eyes open wide, he shouted out, "Not good, brother Bai-mu has disappeared." Ye-ching was the first person who had discovered Bai-mu's disappearance. He loudly yelled out, which instantly caused everyone's hair to stand up. How is it possible? Bai-mu had extraordinary strength. How could he disappear in the blink of an eye? Many people weren't convinced, but with the dragon mist obstructing their vision, they could only question in loud voices. I personally saw him walking in front of me, and then he suddenly disappeared, Ye-ching said with absolute certainty, and at the same time, he continuously retreated, returning to the protection of his two companions. Suddenly, another contestant, standing not too far away, started yelling. Feng Huang has also disappeared. What sort of demonic place is this? She was just walking by my side. I was distracted for just a moment, then when I turned again, she was gone without a trace. Soon after, all the contestants began to experience the nightmare of their companions disappearing one by one. Master, demon cannot be found, Li Qinghong, who had been walking behind, said to Li Yoon-mu. She was sticking so close to him that he could even feel her firm bosom. But the words uttered by Li Qinghong at this moment caused Li Yoon-mu's blood to run cold. Demon? Cannot be found? He quickly turned around to look, and sure enough, of the 3 followers that had been walking less than 1 meter behind him, only 2 people remained. Neither Li Qinghong nor Barbarian Niu had any idea when Demon had disappeared. System, what exactly is going on here? Is it due to some illusions? In terms of physical strength and defense, he had become invincible long ago. But what he was afraid of, had happened. His weakest point was related to the soul-type attacks, and that's where he'd been struck. This was the only region which he had not strengthened. While strengthening the 12 rainbow light crystal armor, if he had strengthened the celestial point in the brain 5 times, then he certainly wouldn't be facing this situation now. However, he had chosen to strengthen the heart stimulation position 5 times, and the little shadow ancestor had entered the snake scale of goddess Medusa, so he now had a glaring flaw in his defense. Right then, he took note of an even more terrifying thing. Because of the cover of dragon mist, he had lost all connection to the system. At this moment, Barbarian Niu spoke up behind him. Not good, Qinghong Sis also disappeared. Chapter 282, Courting Death. After experiencing the sudden shock, Li Yoon-mu forced himself to calm down. What concerned Demon and Li Qinghong, as well as the other contestants who had disappeared without any trace, he didn't believe that they were dead. Either they had accidentally entered a place of illusions or their disappearance was just a temporary one and nothing more. He turned his head to look back and saw that Barbarian Niu, who had cried out when Li Qinghong disappeared, also couldn't be seen anymore. Li Yoon-mu once again surveyed the group of contestants around him. The originally large group had already fragmented. Because of the single event, close to half of the contestants were gone. So many people had disappeared in front of everyone's eyes, yet not one had seen the slightest hint of anything. It doesn't matter. Although Li Yoon-mu had lost the protection of Little Shadow Ancestor, after being in daze during the initial moments, by then he had completely calmed down. All the mental and soul-related attacks were effective toward him, but also ineffective at the same time. These attacks could affect his mind, but if the enemy wished to take his life, then they would still have to attack his physical body. In this world, he hadn't yet encountered many people who had the power to ignore his defenses and directly erase his soul. Since this was the case, then as long as he had his absolute defense, why should he be flustered? As long as he advanced forward, the worst outcome would be that he might get trapped and nothing more. Li Yoon-mu also stopped worrying about his 3 followers for the time being. He had faith in them. And besides, they were only followers, they were supposed to protect him and not the other way around. He quickly advanced toward the remaining contestants who hadn't disappeared yet. Gradually, those who hadn't disappeared reached a tacit understanding and joined each other to form a large group. This isn't an attack on one's soul, I'm certain of that. Fortunately for the remaining people, Hai-yu hadn't disappeared. Among all the people present here, her cultivation in the aspect of soul and spirit was the most profound. When she looked at Li Yoon-mu walking calmly toward them, a hint of surprise appeared on her face. This was because she discovered that this person who had lagged behind in the second test had no hint of alarm on his face at this moment. Quickly, the group began to advance forward at a slow pace under the leadership of Hai-yu. Ye-ching had also disappeared during this catastrophe, as well as Man-tien, Zi-hanbei, Zhanhua. While all the contestants were advancing forward cautiously, Ji-wuxin, the disciple of War God Temple, came to Li Yoon-mu's side and asked in low whispers so that only the 2 of them could hear it, "Mysterious Li sect's disciple, are you representing your Li sect or battle sage Vega?" Li Yoon-mu wasn't in the mood to deal with Ji-wuxin's probing and bluntly replied, "Representing? None of them, I represent myself." His words were filled with confidence, even if they were only halfway right. What did Battle Sage Vega or the humanity of the 55th Earth have to do with him? His aim for descending to the origin world was just to gain the slightest chance for himself. If not for that, why would he take the initiative to become someone else's chess piece? He could have just stayed within the 5th dimension until he had accumulated sufficient strength to advance to the 6th dimension without needing to fear the Fluxers there. Wouldn't that have been the best choice for him then? What a pity, you originally had the chance to replace Zhanhua and become the core of our War God Temple, the woman, Ji-wuxin, said. Li Yoon-mu didn't reply, but he had clearly underestimated Ji-wuxin's schemes. She continued to speak, as if not sensing his disinterest. You still have a chance, though. After descending to the origin world, when you find the limit of the assistance provided to you by the Li sect or Battle Sage Vega, come find me. But pay attention, you should only find me and must not speak to Zhanhua. After she finished speaking, she didn't wait for Li Yoon-mu to respond and quickly left his side. As the more than 100 contestants whose nerves had been stretched taut continued to advance, they began to relax. The strange disappearances seemed to have stopped. For a long time, no one else went missing. The people still present were no longer able to look after their companions, so they followed closely behind Hai-yu, trying to reach the dragon's tail. After a long while, Hai-yu suddenly felt that something was odd. She swiftly turned around to look at the back, and her complexion turned deathly pale. Disappearances, those strange disappearances had started up again after stopping for a time. Moreover, this time, the phenomenon became even more dreadful. Originally, their group was composed of around 130-something contestants who were hurrying forward, but when she turned around to look at the back, several tens of them had already disappeared. Furthermore, it happened even more quickly and silently. Even before Hai-yu, who had been advancing very cautiously, could sense anything, close to half the group had already disappeared. Instantly, the nerves of the remaining people already reached their limits, and the people's mental fortitude came close to crumbling. Although the people here were all proud sons and daughters of heavens from the 6 continents and possessed great talent and ability as well as had a unique aspect to their strength, their mental fortitude was quite inferior compared to their formidable strength. They appeared to be dazzling characters from outside, but the majority of them had just been bitterly cultivating their entire lives and hadn't experienced many trials of the outside world. I want to return, I don't want to descend, I only wish to return to the familiar world. A young female Fluxer lost her control. They hadn't descended yet, but only 70-something people of their group of 310 remained. The pressure exerted by this strange phenomenon exceeded the limits of many people's mental endurance. But this female fluxer wasn't done yelling when everyone discovered that they couldn't hear her voice anymore. Within a split second, all the remaining contestants turned completely silent. Hey, wasn't the Black Dragon Island only supposed to be 300-something kilometers long? Given how long we've been walking, we should have already reached the tail. Most of the contestants had already become mentally unstable, but the truly formidable people still maintained their calm. Jia was also present within this group of people. When he saw the majority of people losing control, he sneered, and a hint of disdain flashed on his face. They kept advancing forward on their path, but Yoon-mu had a growing sensation that something wasn't right. According to reason, given their strength, their group should have covered the distance of several hundred kilometers long ago. He was certain that they were moving in a straight line, however, their surroundings hadn't changed much. What did this mean? There were two possibilities. First, they were at the same place and had made no progress. Second, Black Dragon Island was larger compared to how it appeared on the outside. They had actually covered more than 500 kilometers, but the island's environment still displayed no change. There were only these two sensible explanations about why their surroundings weren't changing even after they had walked so much. Yoon-mu was no longer willing to continue acting passively. In any case, what could happen to him? He firmly believed the system's opinion that in front of absolute power, all threats were just fleeting clouds. He suddenly activated his tyrant body. He suddenly turned red like melted pig iron. Formidable people like H.A.C.K, Ji-wooksan sensed this sudden transformed and immediately looked at him. "What are you doing?" H.A.C.K asked, puzzled. "I want to see what sort of mystery this Black Dragon Island contains." Yoon-mu sneered, and the next instant, he unleashed ghostly evasion and transformed into a black ray, which instantly left them everyone far behind under the cover of the black mist. His thinking was very simple. Since the situation couldn't be changed with him acting passively, then he would take the initiative in his own hands. Whether they were just stuck within the same region or this Black Dragon Island was larger than they had imagined, he would solve this riddle using the speed of ghostly evasion. "Nice guts, youngster, you surprisingly dare to court death here. Let's follow him. Someone cutting the path open for us is not something we can get easily." When Jia looked at Yoon-mu's brazen actions, his strength also surged greatly and he chased after the other. "All of us should follow." A hint of hesitation flashed past Hai-Yu's face, but the next instant, she decided to unleash her maximum speed to chase after Jia and Yoon-mu. Chapter 283, Ignite, My Son. When Yoon-mu suddenly took action, this spelled suffering to the remaining people. This was because Woon, Jia, Hai-Yu, Ji-wooksan, these super overlord level characters also chased after Yoon-mu, forcing the rest to strain themselves to keep pace. However, since Yoon-mu had unleashed his ghostly evasion, how could those people catch up to him? In the blink of an eye, the 70-something people were immediately divided into different groups. The group of people who could barely match the speed of Yoon-mu included only Jia, Hai-Yu, and Ji-wooksan. Behind them there was another group of 4, while the third group had even more people following behind them. Those at the far back quickly lagged behind, unable to keep pace with the people in the front. At this time, the first group that included Hai-Yu was extremely astonished. Yoon-mu's ghostly evasion was just too fast. It was fast to the extent that even these super overlords began to feel pressure to keep pace with him. What sort of technique is this person using? How can it be so fast? It's even faster compared to when Devil was using it. Arg! Jiya's temperament wasn't very good, and he had been the first to chase after Yoon-mu. He had wanted to make him the scapegoat who would clear the path for them. Initially, he thought it was good opportunity, but before even a few minutes had passed, he discovered that he had greatly underestimated the other party's speed. From the beginning, Jia had burst forth with his full strength, yet he could barely keep up. Soon, after using his full strength, he discovered that he didn't have the strength to continue on. able to only blankly look at Lee Yoon-mu quickly pulling away from him and disappearing within the black mist. It wasn't like Ji wasn't knowledgeable about people with great speeds. After all, Devil had been publicly acknowledged as the fastest person in the fifth dimension. However, this had been before the signs of the heavenly transformation, when most powerful people of the fifth dimension hadn't yet revealed themselves. At that time, Ji had been extremely confident about his speed, too. He was convinced that if he burst forth at his full speed and employed a movement technique, then his speed wouldn't be much inferior to that of Devil. He was thus now completely shaken by the speed displayed by Lee Yoon-mu. This rookie character Lee Yoon-mu, how exactly did he cultivate? His strength was simply unbelievable. He not only possessed a terrifying defense, but had also concealed such a terrifying speed. It was way faster than what Devil had ever showed. Finally, Ji also renounced. He slowed down and then halted. At this time, the sound of air being cleaved reached his ears and an azure flood wave rushed past him. It was H.A.C.K. At this moment, H.A.C.K was using a secret skill. She had already removed her shoes and was rushing forth using an azure flood wave, which made it look like she was floating. However, her speed wasn't slow, and she quickly passed Ji. Surprisingly, she still had the energy to go after Lee Yoon-mu. Ji received a psychological blow. He knew he possessed great strength and battle prowess, but when he saw H.A.C.K standing upon the azure flood wave and rushing forth, it was as if his mind had fallen into a ninth level of hell. This was the power of Ocean Temple's foundation and reserves. H.A.C.K had always been a person of few words and never appeared in the limelight, but when she displayed her strength at the crucial moment, it made Ji feel inferior. She was definitely using a supreme sage level technique. This secret technique could be said to have surpassed the level of ordinary flux cultivation battle skills and entered an entirely different level. Ji, you can only give up. Before long, Ji Wuxin's wretched voice reached his ears. Ji wasn't on good terms with this woman since long ago. If not for the fact that he couldn't see through her strength, he would have made her experience why flowers are so red. Right then, however, he could only look with his eyes wide open as she quickly flashed past him. An instant before, she had still been behind him, but the next instant she was way ahead, appearing 100 meters in front of him as if she had rushed forward like a falling meteor, with her figure flashing a few times in succession. Battle God Martial Step, you actually cultivate Battle God Martial Step. Ji recalled something and understanding immediately flooded him. Unexpectedly this Ji Wuxin has been handed the Battle God Martial Step. Then is that Zhanhua only a nominal representative of Battle God? What exactly is going on here? Good, 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 so you're the true successor of Battle God, Ji loudly yelled out from behind. He used to believe that whether in terms of strength or determination, he wouldn't lose to anyone. But damn it, this time he had lost to the reserves of the transcending powers. Ji who had lagged behind was finally left alone. At this moment, he suddenly felt something and quickly surveyed his surroundings. An unprecedented fear flashed onto his face. Oh, no, he began to say in a broken voice, but he was cut off, and the next instant, he disappeared. At this time, Lee Yoon-mu with his tyrant body, activated completely, sometimes resembled a load of melted iron while at other times appeared like a small ball of fire rushing forward. With ghostly evasion at the 10th level, just as Ji had noticed, it was more than triple the speed which Devil had reached. The two of them were on completely different levels. But this still wasn't Lee Yoon-mu's peak speed. In order to preserve his strength, he was only displaying the strength of the 5th level of ghostly evasion. But even then, it was sufficient to cause H.A.C.K and Ji Wuxin to grow apprehensive. Regardless of whether it was the Flood Wave or Battle God Martial Step, both of them were presently using supreme level techniques, yet could barely match pace with a rookie who had been cultivating for just half a year. But how could they know that Lee Yoon-mu didn't need to adjust his mental state to cultivate a secret technique nor practice it for a long time? How could they know that as long as he had enough ability points, he could instantly cultivate to the 10th level or even higher. The three of them were moving in a row, traversing through the dragon mist which kept getting thicker with each passing moment. A minute passed. Under normal circumstances, the three of them would have certainly crossed more than 100 kilometers with this speed, but who could say if that was true? The sense of something being wrong here only kept growing within Lee Yoon-mu, for even after he had used ghostly evasion for a long time, the surroundings hadn't changed much. How is that possible? The Black Dragon Island could only be so big. Could it be that I've really entered some sort of maze? Lee Yoon-mu's heart grew cold. But at this moment, he recalled the principle of absolute strength which the system had explained to him previously. That's right, it doesn't matter whether I've entered some sort of illusionary maze or the Black Dragon Island is larger than anyone could have imagined. Why should I care about these mysteries? I will unleash my strength to the pinnacle and break through it all. As Lee Yoon-mu comprehended the meaning of absolute strength more and more, he realized that it wasn't as simple as it might seem at first glance. If he had attained the level of being called absolute in terms of speed, then regardless of whether it was an illusion or reality, regardless of what trapped him, he could use that absolute speed to break through it. Reaching this conclusion, he hardened his resolve. Ignite! Burn it all, my son! Chapter 284, The Concept of Absolute Strength. At this instant, Lee Yoon-mu used up all his ability points on ghostly evasion. Upgrade, 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 upgrade. Within an instant, he upgraded ghostly evasion by 5 levels, and it reached the 15th level. After this, he used the red sun in his chest as the fuel to burst forth explosively, calling out the suppression of flux energy. Instantly, ghostly evasion, which had been upgraded to the 15th level, burst with pinnacle strength, and a layer of flame erupted from the red tyrant body. Congratulations, host! With the use of ghostly evasion and Great Sun Tyrant Body Muscle Marrow secrets, you have successfully comprehended and unleashed Ardent Sun Combustion Supreme Secret Skill, which can be classified as an SSS grade skill. The might of Ardent Sun Combustion will rely upon host's cultivation of Great Sun Tyrant Body Muscle Marrow secrets and ghostly evasion. As their levels grow higher, the power displayed by Ardent Sun Combustion will also increase. Congratulations, host, on comprehending a supreme skill. Your temperament has also matured because of this, making you even more reliable. The system spoke up once again, and its voice even sounded a little pleased. System, you have finally responded. Lee Yoon-mu was extremely overjoyed at this moment. On this Black Dragon Island, his connection with the system had been severed for the first time. This was an unprecedented event, and it was hail added to snow after he had lost the little shadow ancestor. For the first time, he had found himself confronting an unprecedented avalanche. After losing both the little shadow ancestor and the system, he had lost control over the situation. But after experiencing the initial panic, he hardened his resolve and broke through the shackles he had placed upon himself. Then, he finally realized that the current him possessed enough strength to confront any difficulty, even after losing the system. At this instant, Lee Yoon-mu sensed that he had advanced greatly during this short time. It wasn't the advancement in strength but rather in temperament. From a person that always depended on the system, he became someone who could confront the challenges that came before him with courage and resolve. This was his biggest harvest, though he also gained an even deeper understanding of the concept of absolute strength. What bullsh*t mental fortitude, it's just pure crap. The only thing he pursued was absolute strength. Faster, I want to become even faster. Ardent Sun Combustion was the first SSS grade Lee Yoon-mu had comprehended by himself. The next instant, the red sun in his chest suddenly exploded with unprecedented power. This caused a transformation in his body. In an instant, the ray of light became even thicker and sturdier and gradually transformed into a raging sun. With an irresistible destruction power and speed, Lee Yoon-mu instantly burst forth. Strictly speaking, Ardent Sun Combustion wasn't just a high-level evasion technique, it also contained a terrifying destructive ability. Boom! When Li Yoon-mu unleashed Ardent Sun Combustion to its pinnacle, the attack of the Red Sun, which was his personification, seemed to have knocked against a membrane. When his head cleared up, the thick cover of dragon mist around him couldn't be seen any longer. Dragon tail, this should be the final target, the dragon's tail. It should be the passage for descending battle sage Jing had mentioned. Li Yoon-mu knew that he had finally reached the goal of the final test. He calmly observed the front entrance of the Black Passage, with no one around him. From the beginning until now, there had been no one who had reached this region, the goal, before him. If the contestants continued with what they were doing, they would be eternally trapped within the dragon mist. Regardless of whether they were close or far away, it didn't matter. Li Yoon-mu understood one thing, which was that one needed to use absolute strength to break through. This was the most violent, most direct, and fastest as well as simplest method to solve this problem. If you will set rules for me, I will use absolute strength to break them. Never will I move according to your rules. In time, two people gradually appeared beside Li Yoon-mu. Hai-yu and Ji Wuxin, these two women had ugly expressions. They had never expected that by doing their utmost to catch up to Li Yoon-mu they would actually reach the descending point so quickly. No one had thought that he would unexpectedly use such a method to reach the dragon's tail. And what was even more surprising, while blindly following him, they had reached it alongside him without much effort. What sort of technique did you use just now? Ji Wuxin asked with a hint of astonishment on her face. She had obtained the true inheritance of Battle God and possessed the Battle God martial step, but she still couldn't solve the riddle in a short amount of time. However, Li Yoon-mu had been able to accomplish just that. But he refused to pay any attention to her. He hated dealing with this sort of arrogant people who thought that just because they were from some transcending power war god temple, in this case they should surpass everyone. He remembered this woman trying to entice him not too long ago to make him into one of her followers. Her plans had been grand, but it was just wishful thinking on her part. Li Yoon-mu cast a glance at Ji Wuxin, then advanced toward the Black Passage. This had to be the descending passage battle sage Jing had told him about. It would lead him to the origin world, which would be totally different from his world, which was just a sealed-off cage and had people like Battle God and others who had already reached the peak here and had no way to advance forward. The 55th Earth would be unable to trap Li Yoon-mu. He didn't want to act on behalf of others, for he had his own path. As long as he descended to the origin world, then whether it was Battle Sage Vega or Battle Sage Jing, both would view him as their equal and would truly treat him like that. Then, he wouldn't have to act passively all the time. Only when both sides were on the same page could their collaboration gain a true meaning. Moreover, only then would Battle Sage Vega and Jing earnestly pay attention to issues concerning Li Yoon-mu. Hai-yu quickly chased after him and said, "Wait a minute. Many of our companions aren't here yet. If you exhaust the power of the passage, then the others will only be able to descend only in 3 years, when the Flux Ancestor will accumulate enough power for another use." Flux Ancestor. A shiver passed through Li Yoon-mu's heart. What does this have to do with Flux Ancestor? This passage is opened by the personification of Flux Ancestor. He has willingly transformed into this passage to descend. Only because of this can it remain open eternally, otherwise it would quickly close up, Ji Wuxin explained with an ashen complexion. She had been surprisingly ignored by Li Yoon-mu. She now clearly understood that she and her master, Battle God, had greatly underestimated this rookie Fluxer's strength. Neither of them had expected that he who had awakened less than 6 months ago would already possess this level of strength. Ji Wuxin changed her act and no longer acted arrogantly in front of Li Yoon-mu. Instead, she began to treat him as a person on the same level as her, while a hint of fear was concealed within her heart. Chapter 285, Unexpected Attack. This passage is an incarnation of the Flux Ancestor. A hint of astonishment flashed through Li Yoon-mu's eyes. Is this really true? Instantly, something he'd been confused about cleared up. That's right, this is the biggest secret of this world. I only learned about it 3 days ago, after clearing the second test. Fancy that, I also thought that the Flux ancestor was. Yu forced a bitter smile, but didn't say any more. Clearly, even if she belonged to the Ocean Temple, it hadn't been long since she had learned the truth. Then what about the Tower of Glory? Yoon-mu wrinkled his brows. Ji Wuxin snorted, she clearly knew more about it. Seeing that only the 3 of them were here, she explained some of the matters related to the heavenly transformation. It's nothing else but a way to keep the passage open. The Flux ancestor needs to absorb the Flux energy in its purest form at all time, otherwise, this passage couldn't be maintained for long. After Yoon-mu heard this, he understood the complete situation. It was no wonder then that this time they had to cross the 70th level to obtain the qualifications for the continental battle. It wasn't a real test, or if being even more accurate, it didn't need to exist at all. This assessment was only selected because the 6 transcending powers had reached an agreement with the Fluxer Guild to create a trap. With the qualification to the continental battle hanging as bait, they were able to get numerous formidable Flux disciples to challenge the tower. Yoon-mu had seen that in just a short while, the number of people who had cleared the 70th level of the Tower of Glory had reached 1,000. But the hidden truth was that the number of people who would remain eternally within the tower because of this qualification bait far surpassed the number of those who had passed the test. The energy absorbed from those proud sons and daughters from all the powers of the 6 continents who had died within the tower would provide the energy needed to open the descending passage for the chosen ones. There is no free lunch in this world. If the Fluxers of the 55th Earth wanted to descend to the origin world in large numbers, a great price had to be paid. And it was paid by the countless people who had perished within the tower, thus supplying the passage for descension with sufficient energy. At this time, Yoon-mu understood why the transcending powers hadn't tried to obstruct the Flux ancestor. It was because they were also a part of his conspiracy. It was certainly an enormous conspiracy, but they had no other choice. This was the only way they had found after negotiating it with the Flux ancestor. Compared to the life and death of all the people in this world, the sacrifice of a few weaker Flux disciples wasn't even worth mentioning. This is fair, we had the strength to clear the 70th level of the tower. Therefore, we have the right to use the power obtained by sacrificing other people. Those people who didn't possess sufficient strength but still hope to gain more rewards can only blame themselves for being greedy without having the strength to back it up. Suddenly, a male walked out from the dragon mist at a distant place. Dragon's tail, this should be the dragon's tail which Supreme Master was talking about. I've finally reached here. Yoon-mu, Yu, and Ji Wuxin simultaneously turned around and discovered a 20-year-old youth. He was wearing a long white gown with a pattern made of silver thread on the sleeve of his arm as well as a character North printed on the left side of his chest. Northern Continent's frontline heaven? Yoon-mu narrowed his eyes and began to size up this unknown youth. The presence excluded by him made him appear friendly and amiable, but he didn't look the least bit friendly. Instead, he seemed to be quite arrogant. When Yoon-mu saw this person coming here without having passed any tests, his heart grew cold. Apparently, the idea spread through the world that transcending powers didn't intervene in the worldly matters and didn't meddle with the ruling powers of the continents were only empty words. Brother Beichen, you have come. Yu's expression slightly changed upon seeing the newcomer, and she bowed towards him from afar, then turned to Yoon-mu and said, Brother Li, this is the disciple of frontline god, Beichen Huan. After presenting him to Yoon-mu, she was ready to introduce him to the other part, but Beichen Huan waved her off. I know Yoon-mu, the person whose fame has spread quite fiercely in the recent times. I heard Devil also died under his hands. Beichen Huan looked at Yu with eyes filled with surprise. For her to address a person like she had done just then caused Beichen Huan to feel a hint of astonishment. Given her background and personal strength, she definitely wouldn't address a rookie who had appeared this year like she had addressed Yoon-mu. This caused him to re-evaluate this newcomer. In this world, only power was considered supreme. Given Hai-Yu's behavior, it was clear that Li Yoon-mu's strength had already gained acknowledgement of her and Ji Wuxin. Within a split second, Huan Beichen's mind turned to scheming. That's right, I believe he should have the third part of the Azure Dragon deity battlesuit on him, so he must be killed, Beichen Huan said bluntly, not avoiding this sensitive topic. Given that he was the disciple of frontline god, it wasn't a wonder that he spoke directly about Devil's Matter. Li Yoon-mu and him were destined to be enemies. Why didn't he need to pass the examination? Li Yoon-mu asked Ji Wuxin and Hai-Yu. We the main disciples of the six transcending powers already possess the qualifications to descend. Hai-Yu and Ji Wuxin only wanted to test themselves and nothing more. Beichen Huan then changed the topic. Say, do you have the Azure Dragon leg guards? Li Yoon-mu didn't reply to Beichen Huan's rubbish, and the atmosphere between the four people became extremely tense. Good, I hope that you have the courage to find me after descending to the origin world, Beichen Huan told him with a sneer. No need to wait for that. I will test you right now, to see whether you have the qualifications to descend or not. Bang! Layers of cracks appeared on the ground. Who could have expected that Li Yoon-mu would directly pounce on Beichen Huan, who had just appeared out of the dragon mist without any notion to attack? Not only were Hai-Yu and Ji Wuxin caught off guard, even Beichen Huan was flabbergasted. He became extremely furious. How long? He couldn't remember how long it had been since the time he started cultivating that someone had had the guts to provoke him. This Li Yoon-mu had a fortuitous encounter and some strength, yet he was thinking of challenging him. Great courage, since you have decided to take the initiative, then don't blame me for chopping you down in front of the Flux Ancestors personification without caring for the general circumstances, Beichen Huan furiously bellowed. However, Li Yoon-mu's speed was too fierce. Although there was quite a distance between the two of them, Li Yoon-mu unleashed the spirit pincer step, and with giant pincers, he rushed towards his target in large strides as booms echoed in his wake. Chapter 286, Tearing Huan Beichen. A punch filled with terrifying killing intent arrived in front of Beichen Huan, who had underestimated Li Yoon-mu's resolve to kill him. He had never expected that this newcomer would try to kill him right away, without any regards for rules and regulations. He simply hadn't expected that there would be such a lunatic in this world who didn't possess the slightest fear of a transcending power. He had also greatly underestimated the ferocious strength of Li Yoon-mu's flesh. Actually, Li Yoon-mu himself didn't know the extent of the strength of his flesh. Ever since he had cultivated the Devil Dragon Bone refining secrets and Great Sun Tyrant Body Muscle Marrow secrets, as well as had strengthened his heart 5 times, he hadn't gotten the chance to test the extent of the ferocious power his flesh could achieve. Not good, Huan Beichen has acted carelessly, Ji Wuxin cried out in surprise. If she hadn't personally followed Li Yoon-mu as he reached the dragon's tail, she probably would also underestimated his savageness. Then what to speak of Huan Beichen, who hadn't appeared in public before? They were currently at the dragon's tail, which was the region where the suppression on the flux energy was the highest. Let alone flux energy, it was very difficult to use even dark flux energy. This implied that the battle between the two here would depend solely upon their physical strength. Huan Beichen had realized this, but he hadn't reacted. Or perhaps, he knew and understood it, but his consciousness still couldn't keep pace with the reality of what was happening. Just this one point was sufficient to decide the outcome. When truly powerful people exchange blows, one mistake is everything, especially when one of them has already decided to kill the other, like Li Yoon-mu had done. Upon taking hold of Huan Beichen's mistake, he would have the best opportunity to kill him. Sure enough, for Li Yoon-mu, who had moved to attack without saying anything, this opportunity was more than sufficient. Huan Beichen, who tried to react in a panic, discovered that he couldn't use his flux energy as well as the northern ice dark flux energy which he cultivated. But when all is said and done, he was still the most valued disciple of frontline god, so his initial response to the attack was still very fast. Even if he had lost all his flux energy, just by relying on his reflexes, he subconsciously unleashed the mini-star steps of North Heaven. This conventional martial footwork was profound and effective even after losing the flux energy. Huan Beichen was located at the edge of the region where the dragon mist ended. After losing the first moment, it was impossible for him to resist Li Yoon-mu's punch, which was filled with extreme killing intent. Maybe if he got into the dragon mist, he would be teleported to some random region on the Black Dragon Island. With some flickers of lightning, Huan Beichen took the best course available to him. He faintly sidestepped to the left side, and at the final instant, he was able to dodge the ruthless and explosive punch of Li Yoon-mu. However, he still wanted to counterattack. As long as he could leave this area at the edge of the dragon mist, the situation would immediately change. At that time, he would no longer be restricted, unable to counterattack. But it was already too late. No one had expected that even if Huan Beichen dodged Li Yoon-mu's killing maneuver in an astonishing way, he would still be unable to escape unscathed. Li Yoon-mu's final deadly move reached him at this time, and it was the Spirit Pincer Rip. This move, which had reached the second rank with the Spirit Pincer step reaching the 20th level, instantly burst forth with 6 times its peak power. This was clearly an extremely deadly move. As long as the user's strength was sufficiently formidable, this Spirit Pincer Rip was swifter and more ruthless than any other supreme killing technique. Furthermore, which position had Li Yoon-mu strengthened 5 times? It was his heart. At this time, the opportunity to activate it had finally arrived. Li Yoon-mu decisively activated his heart 5 times within an instant. Hai Yu and Ji Wuxin could clearly hear the thunderous throbs coming from his body. Their complexions immediately changed. Within their consciousnesses, they could see Li Yoon-mu's heart swelling and becoming stronger. With each throb, his strength would increase. It was a power that would make others tremble. They saw Li Yoon-mu's arms, which originally had been too strong, swell and increase in size at a rapid pace. Soon, blue veins appeared on his muscular body as if he was a dimensional beast, and his arms appeared to have transformed into huge pincers which were even larger and stronger compared to the original body. As these enormous pincers burst forth and clamped down on the slender waist of Huan Beichen, who had dodged the punch, and ruthlessly tore him in two. Instantly, the two women felt as if the world had turned quiet. Protective seals flashed on Huan Beichen's body, but they ended up being useless and swiftly broke down. Li Yoon-mu's enormous pincers shredded the youth into 2. His blood and internal organs fell everywhere, covering the ground with blood. This year, a representative of a transcending power, the disciple of Frontline Heaven's frontline god, was instantly shredded into 2 by Li Yoon-mu, who appeared to have gone berserk. Bang, 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 bang. At this time, after killing Huan Beichen, Li Yoon-mu's heart was still throbbing thunderously. His 2 red-colored huge pincers made him look like the most vicious human-shaped beast in this world. Even if the power he had gained from activating his strengthened heart 5 times added together with the 6 times increase in his arm power obtained by unleashing the Spirit Pincer Rip lasted for only a short time, it didn't matter. Li Yoon-mu finally understood what sort of unique and vicious power he would obtain after he exploded forth with these 2 skills. Strictly speaking, the strength of his physical body had burst forth to its pinnacle power, even greatly surpassing the flux power he possessed. Hui! Li Yoon-mu had exploded with power in an instant, and his return to the original condition was also just as quick. His tyrannical body couldn't support the stimulation by the 5 times strengthened heart for a long time, or it would collapse. The same was also true for the Spirit Pincer Rip, which boosted the strength of his arms. Since it was an extremely deadly move, if he didn't succeed in killing his opponent in one shot, then the power of his arms would greatly decrease. But still, he now had a deadly move to instantly kill his enemies. You killed Huan Beichen? You know what this means? How could you, how dare you do this? Ji Wuxin subconsciously reacted, feeling both enraged and fearful at the same time while pointing at Li Yoon-mu. After restoring himself to his normal state, Li Yoon-mu said calmly, I know, I'm naturally aware of what you want to say. Now, I'll have to deal with the full strength of a transcending power. Moments later, he added another sentence. But so what, I will descend immediately. This sentence left Ji Wuxin dumbstruck. What was this? Immediately descend? Suddenly she realized that they were going to descend soon. As long as he descended to the origin world, what top 10 upper tier sects, what *T transcending power, all of them were worth no more than a fart in the origin world. What frontline god, he was just a fleeting cloud, and so was Battle God, the master of Ji Wuxin and the person regarded as the strongest in this world. Right then, both Hai Yu and Ji Wuxin finally understood why Li Yoon-mu had acted so fearlessly. The rules of this world had already changed for them. Ji Wuxin seemed to have understood that this person in front of them who usually appeared to be extremely calm had displayed his most vicious side in front of them just because of this reason. Chapter 287, Devastating Amount of Casualties. Li Yoon-mu attacking frontline heavens Huan Beichen without any provocation wasn't just a reckless action on his part. Since the person was foreordained to be his enemy after they descended to the origin world, why shouldn't Li Yoon-mu get rid of him here and eliminate one difficult enemy? At the dragon's tail, Huan Beichen's strength had been suppressed, including his flux energy, dark flux energy, and even the treasures which activated because of flux energy. All of them had been completely useless here. This was the most fundamental reason behind Li Yoon-mu's sudden attack. If he missed this chance, Huan Beichen would have descended to the origin world, and Li Yoon-mu wasn't absolutely certain of his own victory, given the number of life-saving treasures the other would be carrying. There was also another important reason. In this region filled with black dragon mist, apart from Flux disciples, the powerhouses in higher realms couldn't intervene. This is the reason from which Li Yoon-mu's confidence stemmed when he dealt with Huan Beichen without any apprehensions. As for the transcending power frontline heaven, even if it learned about this matter in the future and desired to cause trouble for his family, Li Yoon-mu wasn't the least bit concerned about that. Since he knew that Battle Sage Vega and Battle Sage Njing had received the complete inheritance of the dual-star Supreme Battle Suit, he wasn't the least bit worried about them being unable to deal with this problem. If she couldn't even do this, then there was no point for Li Yoon-mu to collaborate with her. Also, no one in the outside world would know for the longest time that Li Yoon-mu had killed Huan Beichen. And as for the only two people who knew, they didn't intend to become enemies with Li Yoon-mu. The 6 transcending powers also weren't united. There were many conflicts and strifes among them. Besides, Huan Beichen was already dead, and dead people don't have any friends. After some consideration, both women acted as if nothing had happened and tried their best to form a friendship with Li Yoon-mu. For a period of time, the 3 people didn't talk to each other. All of them just found a good spot and sat down in lotus position to regulate their breathing and wait for others to arrive at the dragon's tail. Regardless of whether it was Li Yoon-mu or Hai Yu or Ji Wuxin, none of them believed that people like Zihanbei or Man Tian wouldn't be able to cross this final test. After a long time passed, the 4th person walked out of Dragon Mist, and he was Fan Kong. In the calm eyes of Li Yoon-mu and both women, a hint of cautiousness instantly flashed. This Fan Kong had shown up again, which was completely out of the 3 people's expectations. Was this Fan Kong really just a rogue ascetic from the wilderness? Li Yoon-mu didn't believe it and neither did the 2 women. 3 benefactors, we meet again. After reaching the dragon's tail, Fan Kong saw the 3 of them and advanced towards them. His gaze surveyed the 3 of them, and when he recognized Li Yoon-mu, a hint of astonishment flashed through his expression. He was wearing a crude gown and had clasped his hands in a modest way to greet the 3 of them, after which he also chose a spot and sat down to wait for the remaining contestants to arrive. The 5th person to arrive was Zihanbei. When he looked at the 4 people in front of him, he was slightly surprised. But he didn't say anything and found a spot for himself to wait for others. Although Zihanbei hadn't made any unusual movements, Li Yoon-mu could sense that because of his appearance, Ji Wuxin's breath had become unstable. She was no longer as calm as before. After this, more and more people began to arrive. What allowed Li Yoon-mu to breathe a sigh of relief was that Li Qinghong was the 16th person to come out of the dragon mist. She quickly came to his side and began to narrate the events that had happened after she disappeared. The dragon mist contained some sort of mysterious power. As long as the people were infected to a certain point by it, they would be teleported from their location. They would then appear at other distant parts of the Black Dragon Island. Moreover, every time this mysterious power reached a certain point within their bodies, they would be teleported again and again after a fixed time interval, until they escaped. Li Qinghong had been teleported 7 times in succession, and every time the region where she was teleported to was completely different. Some were safe, but others were filled with dangers. According to her, the space occupied by this Black Dragon Island was much larger compared to what was estimated in the outside world. Moreover, some parts were filled with all sorts of life forms transformed by dragon blood and thus excessively formidable. Some of the formidable dragon blood monsters had already reached the sage layer. In short, if the contestant was teleported to these regions, they wouldn't have enough time to hide or flee and would certainly be killed. And Li Qinghong had come to face this fate. During the 6th teleportation, she had encountered a temporal layer dragon blood monsters and had been killed by this dimensional beast. Fortunately, she had received assistance from the undying sage blood in feigning her death, which provided her with a chance to escape. When Li Yoon-mu heard this, he became fearful for barbarian Niu and demon. How does this Black Dragon Island have so many dragon blood life forms? Li Yoon-mu was curious. According to what I've heard, there should a corpse of a black dragon buried on this Black Dragon Island. When birds and beasts roaming around this place obtained the blood of the black dragon, they were transformed, and all sorts of formidable dragon blood monsters were born. All of whom are excessively formidable, Li Qinghong said after pondering for some time. While both of them were conversing, 7 more people came out of the dragon mist. All of them were in a sorry state, one of them having even lost an arm, and all had fear etched on their faces. But regardless of whatever was said, they had all relied upon their own strength and fortune to clear the Black Dragon Island. According to the bits and pieces of information provided by Li Qinghong, the system formed a broad conclusion. This island occupied the space at least 16 times larger than 300 km², which was the perimeter calculated from the outside. Under usual circumstances, this would mean that everyone would have to cross at least 5,000 kilometers if they wished to reach the dragon's tail from its head. However, after being teleported for the first time, after a time interval, they would be continuously teleported to other places involuntarily. They would also have to confront the threat of all sorts of dragon blood dimensional monsters in the regions they were dropped in. Thus, covering the distance of 5,000 kilometers using ordinary methods to reach the dragon's tail was extremely difficult. Thus, it wasn't surprising that the quasi-deities had placed so much importance on these contestants. After all, it was apparent that a flux disciple setting off towards the dragon's tail from the head would just be courting death. Apart from possessing extraordinary strength and methods, they would still need a certain amount of good fortune so that they would be teleported to the territory of formidable beasts. Li Yoon-mu breathed another sigh of relief when he saw the 27th person coming out of the dragon mist. It was his follower, Demon. Demon being able to reach this point surprised many people. According to reason, with his flux energy being suppressed, he shouldn't have had the strength to come this far. His body was covered in bruises and wounds, but none of them were too deep. He had safely reached the endpoint. At my 13th teleportation, I saw Fan Zhanshan and Ren Sujun's corpses. In one of the previous 12 teleportations, the dragon beasts in whose territory I was teleported weren't extremely formidable and I was able to escape using ghostly evasion. But during one of my teleportations, I was transferred to a strange valley which had many resentful souls, both human and beast. All of them were extremely powerful. If I hadn't cultivated the bloodline of Ghost Clan which made them think I was the same as them, I probably would have perished there. Chapter 288, Ling Shuang still missing. During the 2 hours after Demon appeared, the number of people who were able to cross the dragon mist continued to decline. In that time, only 3 came out. One of them was Coiling Tiger. Apparently, his luck hadn't been very good. Even though he was a descendant of barbarian King Coiling Dragon, he had almost perished inside. As soon as he emerged, he collapsed on the ground. Man Tian pondered for a moment, then walked toward him to help him up. There was a big cavity in Coiling Tiger's chest, and it was so large that even his internal organs were clearly visible. If he wasn't an evolved human from the desolate continent who had merged with a formidable bloodline, he would have most likely been dead by then. When the rest of the people saw Coiling Tiger in critical state, they felt their hopes of anyone else coming out of the dragon mist slowly being crushed. The journey from the dragon's head to its tail was extremely cruel. Even Barbarian King's son had narrowly escaped with his life. Anyone who didn't possess strength and good fortune would certainly perish during this journey. Even those who were extremely formidable but had bad luck would not make it out. After Coiling Tiger, the 32nd contestant arrived 3 hours later. It was Ruin Lanzi, the heavenly daughter of the powerful Lanzi clan from the higher dimensional continent. At this time, she no longer had her arrogant expression. Her complexion was deathly pale when she weakly staggered out of the dragon mist. Soon, one of the contestants who had good relations with her clan moved forward to assist her and save from the schemes of others. Although Battle God had repeatedly stressed before this test began that all of them were the stars who represented the hopes of this world, it was hard to fathom a person's mind. Who could guarantee that among the 32 contestants present here there wasn't anyone who was planning anything? Especially now that they were about to descend and this world's rules didn't apply to them anymore. Among the 32 people present here, how many of them still retained Battle God's words in their hearts? It was a question whose answer couldn't be known. After this, the group waited for another 2 days. After this time, 2 more people walked out of the dragon mist. They were S.H.A.D.W and Bladewood's Blade Devil. S.H.A.D.W appeared to be rather carefree. Apart from her white gown being damaged in 2 places, she didn't seem to have suffered any injuries, which made Yoon-mu even more certain that her heavenly world had attained the 3-sun level. Otherwise, he couldn't imagine her, who was a rookie just like him, being able to reach this stage without any trump card like his system. When Bladewood's Blade Devil came out, everyone's eyes instantly focused on him, this descendant of higher dimensional continents' transcending power. Among the 6 transcending powers, the one who had the firmest desire to obtain power and the one which was the most formidable would definitely be Bladewood. The people that belonged to this transcending power had mostly grown up in the higher dimensional continent, experiencing all sorts of dangers. Moreover, after joining Bladewood, their desire to condense a blade intent would reach the level of craziness. Someone had previously said that out of every 10 disciples of Bladewood, 8 were lunatics, and Bladewood's current successor, Devil Blade, was a madman even among madmen. His craziness to cultivate his blade intent had already reached a frightening stage. This was the first time that Yoon-mu had seen this successor of Bladewood. With his pedigree, Blade Devil had qualified for a spot without appearing in any of the competitions. Blade Devil chose a spot with an indifferent expression on his face and sat down. The test of the Black Dragon Island was apparently quite ordinary for him. From this, the strength of people from Bladewood could be clearly seen. But this wasn't important at the moment, for Yoon-mu had something else to worry about. Within 3 days, even Blade Devil had reached the dragon's tail, but Barbarian Niu still hadn't come out. Furthermore, it wasn't only Barbarian Niu that was missing. There was another person Yoon-mu worried about, and that was Ling Shuang. Due to this, he couldn't remain calm. Although he and Ling Shuang didn't have much contact, from the time he had started walking on his path as a Flux disciple, she had been a sincere and reliable friend. How could Yoon-mu have expected that Ling Shuang, who never said much yet was quite powerful, would surprisingly fall short at the last stage? S.H.A.D.W, who was standing not far from him, said with a sigh, the cultivation period must have been too short. Yoon-mu knew that she was sighing for Ling Shuang. Currently, 34 people had come out of the dragon mist and divided themselves into 7 small groups: Central Continent, Higher Dimensional Continent, Desolate Continent, Northern Continent, Sea Gods People, Holy Spirit Continent, as well as a group formed by people like Fan Kong and Z-Han-bei who were classified as rogue fluxers. Yoon-mu, S.H.A.D.W, and Ling Shuang were all rookie fluxers, and all of them had come from the Central Continent, so it was natural that they would subconsciously feel a bond of comradeship. Clearly, S.H.A.D.W also felt quite regretful that Ling Shuang hadn't come out. From the 3 rookies of the Central Continent, only she was missing. Suddenly, Mammoth Barbarian Huang stood up. It's already been 3 days, those who haven't come out yet will probably never do so. I don't think we should waste any time for them and start descending. That's right, everyone is well aware of the dangers inside the Black Dragon Island. 3 days is quite a long time, so I don't believe that there are any more people inside who are still alive. I'm in favor of descending now. Who knows what may happen if we delay for long, Zhongshan Onling agreed. But at this time, Yoon-mu and Z-Han-bei as well as Zhang Wei said in unison, "Hold on." Instantly, the atmosphere became heavy. Man Tian, Mammoth Barbarian Wuhanji and Coiling Tiger who had recuperated in the last 2 days as well as Tyrant Zhang were all the representatives of the Barbarian Kings. None of their group were missing. Naturally then, they didn't have any reason to wait around. But Yoon-mu was obviously not willing to move on. Regardless of whether it was Barbarian Niu or Ling Shuang, he wasn't ready to give up on either of them. He still wanted to wait, hoping for some miracle. As for Z-Han-bei, he was naturally waiting for Gea. Given his strength, the lack of his presence here, it could only mean that his luck was even worse compared to that of Coiling Tiger. At that moment, Zhang Wei said, "Huan Beichen still hasn't come." "What? The direct disciple of Frontline Heaven still hasn't appeared?" The next instant, many people began to realize that they were still missing one very important person of one of the transcending powers. However, given the strength of Frontline Heaven's Huan Beichen, he shouldn't have died in the Black Dragon Island. If that was really the case, then this would be a huge joke. Beichen Huan's luck was certainly extremely poor if he had encountered a sage-level dragon beast. Only Hai Yu and Ji Wuxin meaningfully glanced at each other. After all, both of them had seen what had happened to him personally, but they had formed a tacit understanding to not reveal this matter. Yoon-mu was inwardly surprised. Zhang Wei belonged to the war god temple of the Central Continent, so why did he care so much about a member of Frontline Heaven? What **T was this? For a period of time, everyone pondered what to do next. Since the quasi-deities have given us 5 days, I think that we should wait for 5 days. Descending then wouldn't be too late. After all, every person who clears this round would mean an increase in our group's power. Hai Yu also requested Man Tian and the others to wait a little longer. Man Tian's complexion changed. But when he realized that Qing Yu still hadn't come out, he didn't insist on descending now. After all, the relationship between their two peoples was quite deep. Thus everyone agreed to wait for 2 more days, even if after experiencing the dangers of Black Dragon Island, they didn't have much hope. Chapter 289, World Traitor. While Hai Yu, Yoon-mu, Zhang Wei, Z-Han-bei and the others were trying to stop the disciples of the 4 barbarian kings from descending immediately, an unexpected thing happened. Ye-ching, who was nearest to the descending passage, suddenly rushed towards it, followed by his 2 companions. "What's going on? Ye-ching, you sure have guts." Chao Tian sect. Because of this event, every descender's eyes became fierce. But it was too late, everything was too late. Ye-ching and his 2 followers had prepared in advance, having chosen a spot relatively close to the descending passage. Everything happened within a blink. Ye-ching instantly reached the descending passage and said with a sinister expression on his face, "Do not come over, else I will immediately destroy this descending passage." At this instant, H.A.C.K had finally revealed his true face. The conspiracy which H.A.C.K sect had been planning from the beginning finally reared its head. At this time, the two companions of H.A.C.K removed their masks, revealing their true identities. Unexpectedly, they were the substitute Holy Son and substitute Holy Daughter of Divine Religion. When did this happen? How come the substitute Holy Son and Daughter of Divine Religion ignored their status and surprisingly turned into H.A.C.K's lackeys? Everyone was baffled. Even Yoon-mu was extremely astonished. He had heard about H.A.C.K sect's wild ambitions from Li Qinghong, but regardless of all he knew, he had never anticipated that H.A.C.K sect would dare to take such a step. Immediately, many knowledgeable people understood what was going on. Fan Ni. Zhang was a disciple of one of the transcending powers of the 6 continents, so he naturally recognized the two people by H.A.C.K's side. When others realized that these two were the disciples of divine religion, their expressions changed. They hadn't expected that divine religion wouldn't dispatch anyone to descend, not because they had renounced their chance to compete, but because they had already sneaked in their people with fake identities. This was an enormous conspiracy. Given the scale of events plotted by H.A.C.K sect and divine religion, perhaps even the entire Holy Spirit continent was also part of it. They had indeed prepared for this for a long time. "What do you all want?" Coiling Tiger, Man Tian, and the others were both enraged and terrified. They had been insisting on descending immediately and thus were the group closest to the descending passage. However, after H.A.C.K's warning, none of the disciples of the 4 barbarian kings thought of taking even half a step forward. Blade Devil and others who were getting restless and storing energy also forcibly halted their actions, not daring to make a move after hearing H.A.C.K's threat. The descending passage to the origin world was opened by the Flux ancestor with great difficulty after he had congealed his 7th son. It had required all the energy of his heavenly world to open and consolidate for eternity so as to allow the future generations to fight for their survival. Moreover, there was also the steady flow of pure flux energy absorbed from the Tower of Glory that ensured that the passage wouldn't close. However, none of those who were about to descend had expected that among their group, a world's traitor would appear before they had even left their land. H.A.C.K sect's rapacious designs far surpassed everyone's imagination. "You want to become a traitor who will be condemned by the entire world for destroying the descending passage?" Devil Blade asked coldly. "Haha, become a traitor condemned by the entire world, what's that? As long as we return with a path to the Supreme Peak, everything will change and none of you here will be able to reveal today's secret. The only people who will descend today are the people of our Holy Spirit continent, the rest of you can go and die. Inevitably, there will come a day when I, H.A.C.K, will successfully discover the path to become a true god." H.A.C.K laughed malevolently while staring at everyone. After obtaining the 6th transcending sage tool from Yoon-mu, the final phase of H.A.C.K sect's plan was put in action. At this crucial time, Hai Yu's face turned cold, and she said in a threatening voice, "You won't succeed. With Flux Ancestors' heavenly world's power stabilizing the descending passage, how can 3 trifling Flux disciples destroy it?" The descending passage was extremely important to the entire world, since it was the last hope of this earth, so how could the quasi-deities be foolish enough to allow any person to destroy it? The reason why the quasi-deities weren't cautious regarding the descenders was because with the passage being stabilized by the power of the Flux Ancestors' heavenly world, even if a battle sage came personally, he wouldn't be able to destroy it. At this moment, H.A.C.K, Fan N, and Fan Ni revealed a sinister smile. Although even battle sages cannot destroy the descending passage created by the Flux Ancestor, what if we used void displacement? Fan N was full of smiles. Furthermore, we won't hesitate to use the power of 6 transcending tools as the price. With this, void displacement will be activated, and tell me, what would be the end result of that be? Suddenly, a transcending sage tool appeared within Fan Ni's hands. Her hands were clasped over a small bottle with caution. Sacred purifying bottle. At this instant, the brains of many people stopped working. No one had expected this situation, and none could even guess for how long Chao Tian sect and divine religion had been preparing for this moment. I also have the sword of trial. Another transcending sage tool appeared in the hands of Fan En. Swiftly, both transcending sage tools of divine religion were revealed. At this time, Ye-Qing also fished out 3 items. They were the 3 transcending sage tools Chao Tian sect had gathered after relentless searching that lasted several years. We still have to thank brother Li Yoon-mu. If he hadn't exchanged the void disk with me 3 days ago, then it would have been very difficult to obtain the 6th transcending sage tool before descending. Ye-Qing faintly smiled as he looked at Li Yoon-mu, then he took out the void disk which he had obtained not longer ago. At this instant, he was feeling unprecedented joy while looking at the shocked expression on Li Yoon-mu's face. Ye-Qing's previous anger had vanished completely. There was nothing more exciting compared to this for him. Although descending to the origin world and searching for the path to become a true god was important, the last choice would be made by them alone. At this moment, everyone's expressions became gloomy. Although no one was certain that Ye-Qing's group could destroy the descending passage just by relying on void displacement and paying the price of 6 transcending sage tools, they didn't dare to call them out on their bluff in case it was all real. Ye-Qing seemed mighty confident in himself. Chapter 290, The Benefits of a Black Heart. As Ye-Qing had said, everyone was too late, no longer able to stop them. Even Man Tian's group of 4 who were closest to the 3 people, with only a distance of several tens of meters between them, couldn't stop them even if they used their greatest speed. Everyone's heart sank into a deep abyss. This matter regarding descending to the origin world had shaken the Flux disciples of the entire world from the moment it began. One after another, many clans, organizations, sects, and even powers who usually wouldn't reveal themselves used all sorts of methods to help their people clear the 70th level. Numerous people had sacrificed their lives in an attempt to reach this place, and for what? Just for their hope to be snatched away right before the beginning of the heavenly transformation? For the longest time, only the quasi-deities and the ruling echelons had known about the secret of the heavenly transformation. Only when the Flux disciples had cleared the 2 tests were they also told about it before the 3rd round's start. This heavenly transformation was an event when the 66 parallel Earths met on the same path, and at that time, they would combine to form a whole. Who could dare to guarantee that after heavenly transformation, their 55th Earth would be able to defend its lands and ensure everyone's survival? After all, among the 66 Earths, the 55th could barely reach the endpoint of the highest tier in terms of strength. Thus, many years ago, when the Flux ancestor, this person who was the first one to awaken in human history, had congealed the 7th son of his heavenly world, used all his strength, not even hesitating to sacrifice himself, to establish a passage to the origin world. At that time, because of exhausting all his strength, he had entered a deep sleep on the Black Dragon Island and hadn't woken up even to this day. This was the reason why Black Dragon Island had transformed into a forbidden zone. Before coming here, the Flux ancestor had constructed the Tower of Glory in advance to make sure that the descending passage to the origin world would stabilize. And now, after many years, it almost had enough energy to allow a group of people to descend to the origin world. As the heavenly transformation was coming closer and closer, and the time when the 66 parallel Earths combined came around the corner, the quasi-deities and the ruling powers of the 6 continents decided to pay any price for a chance. 2 years ago, they agreed to do whatever it took to accumulate enough energy to allow a group of Flux disciples to descend to the origin world and fight to ensure the survival of their world. Until now, everything had been advancing smoothly. But at the most crucial moment, a world traitor appeared among them, and this world traitor was surprisingly from one of the 6 transcending powers of their world, divine religion. Among the 6 continents, the Holy Spirit continent was the only one where the transcending power was also the ruling power. Because of it, divine religion was actually the most supreme power on the 6 continents. Until now, the people of divine religion had remained extremely low-key and never intervened in the worldly matters. This was the reason why Chaotian sect, such a trifling upper-tier sect, had been running amok on the Holy Spirit continent. But now, all the descenders found out that all of this was just ***ing pretense. Before this, each of them had looked down on Ye-Qing, the second great-grandson of Chaotian sect's ancestor. They all believed that he had no strength or the qualifications and aptitude to justify his position in Chaotian sect. But how could they have imagined that although this Ye-Qing didn't possess the strength or aptitude equivalent to overlord-level characters, he instead had an extremely unique innate skill. His outstanding ability was to walk between planes, and he had a strong affinity with the void. Because of this revelation, everyone understood many things right away, like why Chaotian sect had chosen Holy Son Fan En and Holy Daughter Fan Ni as Ye-Qing's lackeys. It was very simple. Really, he was one of the rare few flux disciples who could learn void displacement. At this moment, Yoon-mu also understood that the rumor about Chaotian sect collecting 6 transcending sage tools to construct a deadly spell which would make them the 7th transcending power was just ***ing lie. It had been a scheme of divine religion to be unleashed at this exact moment. They would descend themselves and then destroy the passage created by the flux ancestors so no one else could follow after them. Or perhaps it was Chaotian sect's plan. No, Ye-Qing was probably a member of divine religion. This truth had been concealed so deeply that even quasi-deities hadn't taken notice of its existence. Only now was it revealed before those who had passed the 3rd test. Haha, let me tell you something. Apart from the Holy Son and Holy Daughter, our heavenly divine religion has a position above them Heavenly Son. After speaking up to here, Ye-Qing smiled at his captivated audience. And that Heavenly Son is me Fan Qing. Also, I'm not related to the ancestor of Chaotian sect in any way. The only reason why he protected me was that I'm the Heavenly Son, the true Son of the heavens. At this instant, Ye-Qing, no, it should be Fan Qing now, had an extremely arrogant expression on his face as if he was standing high above the whole world. He looked at Li Yoon-mu, Hai Yu, Man Tian, Blade Devil, Zhan Huia, Zi Hanbei and the other flux disciples which were considered as unrivaled in this layer with a disdainful expression. So what if these people were more powerful? The person who would truly decide the fate of the 55th Earth was only him. However, at this moment when Fan Qing was completely assured of victory, Li Yoon-mu, who'd had a shocked expression on his face the entire time, walked forward and said indifferently, "You won't succeed, keep dreaming." At this moment, Li Yoon-mu's heart was filled with complicated feelings, one of which had a taint of fear to it. He really hadn't expected that his transaction with Chaotian sect would develop to this stage, but it was still all right, everything was all right. Fortunately, he hadn't shown any mercy when conning them. Otherwise, divine religion might not have revealed its fangs which had been concealed for who knows how long. That's right, divine religion won't be successful. I, Blade Devil, will even sacrifice my life to return through the dragon mist to inform everyone about Chaotian sect's plans, Blade Devil said coldly. When everyone heard these words, their minds were shaken. No one present doubted his strength. As long as Blade Devil revealed the news that divine religion had schemed that no one else besides them could descend, then great chaos would ensue. Under the attacks of the quasi-deities outside, divine religion would be instantly exterminated. Humph, it too late. Since we dared to reveal ourselves, then naturally we had absolute certainty that you wouldn't be able to escape. And as a matter of fact, not only you, even the group of quasi-deities on the Black Dragon Island will all be transported to another plane because of the chaos created by void displacement, where they will remain until they die. Holy Daughter Fan Ni smiled. Fan En was the most pragmatic person among them, so he said, "Your Majesty Fan Qing, don't waste time on these people. I'm afraid something might change if we continue to delay, let's move." "Good. Then allow me to let you and the group of quasi-deities on the Black Dragon Island experience what is called void displacement." The next instant, the 3 of them activated their 6 transcending tools and Ye-Qing unleashed the void displacement technique. See you later, boys. Yecheng waved towards everyone in a friendly manner. He felt quite pleased, and his joy increased, even more, when he caught sight of Li Yunmu's stunned face.